So the next one, Prendeville and Doherty, implementing organizational change using SPACE to support autistic and neurodivergent adults with intellectual disability. Brothers of Charity Services, Psychology Department, Cork, Ireland, Brighton and Sussex Medical School, Department of Neuroscience, Brighton, United Kingdom.
Hello everybody, my name is Paula Prendeville and I am an educational psychologist working in the Brothers of Charity Service in Cork, and it's an absolute privilege to be here with you today to share with you about how we implemented Autistic SPACE in our organisation to support adults with intellectual disabilities. I'm delighted to acknowledge the support of Mary Doherty and our colleague, Mary's down there, and our colleague in Autistic Doctors International. Without Mary's faith and trust in us to authentically implement the her wonderful autistic framework, SPACE framework, I wouldn't be here today to tell you their story. So the challenge facing us was how could we authentically implement an organisational change process which promoted a rights-based approach that identified a person's needs, that honoured a person's will and preference and facilitated the progressive realisation of a person's rights under the UN Convention for the Rights of Adults or Persons with Disabilities. Along with this also, there was a responsibility for us to consider the UN Convention of the Rights of Children, to recognise a child's emerging autonomy, developmental autonomy, and to promote their voice, to foster positive risk-taking, and to ensure their psychological safety when we were identifying their needs. And this was particularly important to us in the context of supporting transitions processes for young people who are moving from our special schools into our adult services, and to really support them throughout their lifespan. So the other thing that we also looked at was we considered the role of the environment in implementing a universal design for learning approach. And we continue to hear about equality, but however, for true UDL to be implemented, we should be promoting equity. In real terms, equality is giving everybody the same thing, and we are acutely aware that that has not worked across systems. However, equity, so if we were to give an analogy, it would be giving everybody the same shoes. However, for true equity to be implemented, it means that you would give people shoes that would actually fit them. So we know that one size does not fit all, and that's why universal design really needs to be embedded further in all our systems. We need systems that are agile and adaptable to the needs and the context of an actual person. And we use design thinking to develop human-centred, innovative and creative approaches to address the complexity of implementing systems change in our organisation. So where did the inspiration come from? In May 2023, I moved from a national policy role here in Ireland back into clinical practice to work with adults with intellectual disabilities. And I was only 2 weeks in the role when the universe sent me a message, and fortuitously, Mary's Autistic SPACE framework came into my feed. And we psychologists love a good framework, and the framework, Autistic SPACE at Mary, Sue and Seb, the article they wrote was really the light bulb that instigated this instantaneous flash of inspiration, where I could see in that moment how we could embed Autistic SPACE systematically in our service. One of the key tenets of our organisation's ethos is to be creative in approaches, and we knew at that moment that we had the autonomy in the space to creatively apply Autistic SPACE, really to authentically to support the needs of the people from the voices of professionals with lived experience of being autistic and neurodiversity. So what we did is we adapted the SPACE framework to focus on the neurodivergence needs of people, looking at it really from a bottom-up perspective and honouring their voice as a foremost consideration. So the 3 documents here I'm going to briefly just mention, and I'm going to show them to you very, very quickly, that we have used across the system. We've been able to adapt it, agilely adapt it to meet the needs of the person. The first one is my space plan, which you'll see in a second. Second, my space schedule, which really focuses on my views and my experiences. And the third one is my decisions, which is really to support the voice and to support me make a decision. The great thing about these documents is that they were readily available, and you could see how they could be reused and adapted and be really effective in what we were doing. So this is my space plan, and I'm not going to go into any detail about it. My colleague Marion Gardner, who is down there in the audience, is going to speak in more detail about how we've used this in very high support context, so you'll see more about it tomorrow, those that are able to attend. But it really provided persons, the opportunity for the person to share the voice, to provide a wraparound collaborative approach. Staff have used these with children of all ages that are in special schools, teenagers who are attending our children's network teams, and adults of various levels of ages and levels of need, including those with significant and acute and enduring mental health episodes. I was in a special school in Cork recently speaking about the implementation of SPACE, and all the staff were very excited about developing SPACE profiles for all the children in the school, and they're really thinking about using it to address the high staff attrition and burnout rate in autism classes, and they could see the merit of using SPACE to authentically pass on accurate information. Our colleagues have developed these profiles as co-production and collaboration with young people who've gone back into their schools and advocated for themselves using SPACE. And we've also colleagues who have used this profile and the accompanying documentation to support seamless transition of young adults that were going from special schools into adult settings. So that really has been really helpful as a way of actually us integrating the work that we are doing. And anyone who's attending Mary's keynote address tomorrow, we have a young lady who is in one of our training centres. Her name is Sally, and Sally is going to speak part of Mary's keynote address tomorrow to speak for herself in relation to how this SPACE plan has really supported her. So, sorry, I'm on the wrong. Oh, yes. So, next one. So, this page is my views, my experiences. It captures a person's will and preference. And in the spirit of universal design, we mapped Autistic SPACE here, which has been used in many different contexts in many different ways, that have included a schedule to collaborate on a SPACE plan with a person, as a tool to seek their views and preferences of people when they were co-producing SPACE plans, and in some cases, some of the people we support have written it into themselves. So this one is the third one where we're also capturing voice, supporting me to make decisions, and this was developed to enable adults with intellectual disabilities to make decisions in a supportive and neuroaffirmative climate. As you can see, the tenets of SPACE are embedded into this tool to promote consistency in communication and approach, and the tool captures the person's voice to demonstrate their will and preference and to promote their autonomy for decision making. It is assisting us on an ongoing basis to build the capacity of frontline teams to foster a positive neuroaffirmant environment that facilitates adults with disabilities to make decisions. And it is, for us as a service, it is facilitating a transparent approach, demonstrating evidence on an ongoing basis and how this can be recorded in a person-centred, accessible, meaningful and time-efficient way. It was important to us also as a service to look at the top-down piece in relation to organising systems change and to promote a whole of service response to embedding Autistic SPACE into our processes to advance rights. So we focused on implementing this in numerous ways to foster equity on teams via a distributed leadership approach. And this is promoting a consistency in message and approach for effective team working that is accessible and meaningful for the people that we support. An observational school schedule was developed, which I'll show you very briefly, to track a person's response to their SPACE plan over time. And SPACE has been used to also support compatibility assessments for people in residential settings, because it identifies the needs of people together holistically and provides a level of transparency to our decision making. Also, it has inspired us to be creative around, and our team of therapists have actually developed a training programme that focuses on the space domains and implementing space, and we're scheduled to revise the contents of this course to include the voices of the people we support. This is just very brief the observational tool just to demonstrate how we've actually tracked a person's response to intervention over time using the SPACE indicators, and this is agile and it can be creatively adapted to track somebody's response to that intervention. And finally, this is one that I'm just very excited about, is that the disability mantra is nothing about me without me, and it inspired us to take a different approach to report writing. We recognise the challenge with therapeutic reports that are not always read, that are not always understood, and certainly are not accessible for the people that we support. Autistic SPACE inspired us to be creative and to develop an alternative team report that removes barriers that exist in a lot of reports written for disabled people. This approach reframes the power dynamics in report writing, promoting a more equitable approach. And reports are now written from a person's first perspective. So reports are, my name is, this report is written to support me. My team has used the SPACE profile to identify my needs and to make recommendations to support me. Each SPACE domain is defined, a person's needs are outlined under each domain and recommendations are made. Everyone collaborates on the report and signs it at the end, inclusive of therapists, frontline staff and management if they are involved in the process. And if appropriate to do so, a person supported will also sign it as well. And feedback's been really positive for the staff, and there is good level of fidelity in relation to the implementation of the recommendations. And just finally, at a wider systems level, the impact has been significant. We were shortlisted for 2 national innovation awards with the Department of Health this year in relation to access and leadership. And we also have demonstrated it can move seamlessly through different processes, demonstrating that we've used it in special schools with children and as far as end of life, and so really demonstrating a lifespan approach. And children's respite services are looking at the utility of having a child's needs profiled on one page, and our community services are looking at SPACE to promote accessibility around employment opportunities for adults. We really look forward to progressing the work with Autistic Doctors International, and thank you for listening. And I'm around tomorrow and later, so if anyone wants to come and talk to us, please do so. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Now it is time for questions. Please raise your hands. The person. Please, the microphone is arriving.
Sorry, just a query. Writing in first person sounds like a good idea, but if the therapists and managers and others are writing, how much is it actually from the person? Because we do this in social stories, where I often go into schools and social stories are pretty much telling of the child, but written in the first person. So how do you actually get the voice of the people so it's actually what they want rather than what we want?
So it's authentic. I suppose there's good systemic checks really in relation to this work, because we do our best to develop the SPACE plan directly with the person as much and make it accessible as we can. But we have worked with some people with quite significant enduring needs. So there is a piece around good group facilitation, around getting everybody on the same page in relation to the work. And I have to say, so far, we have had absolutely no barriers to doing this work. People have been very inclusive of it, recognise the value of it. And I suppose the fact that, we are all authentically, and ethically really looking at the person's voice and doing our utmost to really live and breathe that idea about nothing about me without me, looking at that rights lens, that it's been very helpful. So even in relation to, for example, the sensory element of SPACE, we have our colleagues in OT that would have sensory diets that would have been previously
you know, a lot of data goes into these reports before they're actually put together, and our speech and language therapists would have very good information around total communication approaches around the C section. So it comes from a lot of observation, a lot of teamwork, working together and really authentically agreeing on a common framework from which we all work from, because it really teases out all the tensions in teams when people think one thing's better than another. So it provides that central framework for everybody to speak a common language in relation, or framework in relation to the work that we do together. So I have to say, we've had no barriers so far. That's not to say that that won't happen at some stage. We're at this a year and a half, so we've a good bit to go yet with it, but thank you for your question. Thanks.
Okay.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you.